I'm on the road to recovery in Nashville, Tennessee. Tennessee has a huge problem with addiction, methamphetamine pills. We spoke with law enforcement today talking about the influx of heroin into this place. Tennessee has a problem just like every other place in America. It's an American pandemic. But recovery is a story that we need to talk about. Recovery is a story we need to focus on. And I'm on the road to recovery. I'm going to meet and introduce you to my good friend, Tyler Bowman.
My addiction? I'd say that it honestly began, I started to recognize as I became sober. It started at childhood and at a very early age. I just had a very addictive personality from probably 3 years old. A lot of manipulation with parents, I can remember, actually, all the way dating back to then. My parents had a shaky relationship, so I was really good at going between the two and trying to manipulate, get what I wanted, or to get things to happen certain ways. Always felt different. Felt like I wasn't part of the group, like there was always something off. It really didn't come in full circle probably until after I quit playing baseball my freshman year of college. It was about that point that I really, after a bad breakup, I started really dabbling in painkillers. Had a doctor prescribe me some Loratabs after a hand injury. I lived a rough life. It was actually, I got in a fight and broke my hand, and they prescribed me a 30-day supply. So I'd already knew from early experimentation that I liked the feeling it gave me, but I think that was the tipping point. It was at that point, you know, they say it takes 7 days to become addicted. And once I finished that prescription, I started seeing signs and symptoms of withdrawals. I didn't know what it was. I actually remember trying to run it off one night when it hit me. I didn't know what restless legs were. From there, it just continued to progress. It took about a year and a half to 2 years. I was already experimenting with other drugs, with needles, and I got into shooting morphine, Oxycontin. It was at that point really just, it went south really fast. I saw that I couldn't manage my life and it was out of control and I was on a downward spiral. I was just working to supply a habit. That's it. I would get up, go to work in the morning sick, and couldn't wait to get off and then go home and not be sick anymore. That was my primary focus, was just trying to survive. I was just trapped. It became even more progressive when I started going to the doctor. I got on a Subutex prescription. I tried to regulate with Subutex to stay off of morphine, and I was doing intravenous injections, and it was at that point I started playing between the two. I started going, I would take Suboxone to get through the day. I would try to bypass it after if I wanted to get high. Like I was just manipulating. I was playing doctor with my life, basically. It was in 2011 that I was just sick of everything. I didn't have the guts to take my own life. So I decided to take my entire prescription of Xanax that the doctor had coincidentally given me along with Suboxone. I slept for 3 days. I just remember waking up to my mother being there, and I thought I'd been asleep for 12 hours. So she looked concerned, and she said, no, sweetie, you've been asleep since Friday. It's Monday now. So apparently in that time she had called poison control, and they said the best thing to do was sleep it off. So after that, they decided sending me to rehab was the best option. That was what set me on the path to recovery. It got in the right direction. Along with that and some run-ins with the police, they saved my life. In 2012, I went down to Florida to get treatment from, it was Royal Recovery. It wasn't exactly an inpatient treatment facility, but I'd gotten sober, went through detox, and the judge allowed me to go, because I was on state probation at the time, to this recovery home in Florida. I stayed sober for a year and started running around with the right people. I didn't do meetings. I didn't take the steps necessary to stay sober, but I just kind of skated on the tail side of AA, and by running around with those people that were staying sober, I stayed sober for that time. But I never really got to the core issues. I never really dug deep into what was causing me to use. I had just taken care of the outside symptoms, but not what my core beliefs were that was driving my addiction. So I had my daughter in 2013 as a product of a rehab romance, and I ended up marrying a rehab romance, the girl that actually I left treatment with before to chase to Florida, coincidentally. We moved back to Georgia. I stayed sober for the remainder of the year, so my longest term of sobriety at that point was about a year. I just remember the most difficult part was after our daughter was born. My ex-wife had started getting back into Loratabs because the doctor prescribed it after giving birth to our daughter. So about 2 weeks later, I started seeing money come up missing in our bank account. So after I followed her a couple times to her dealer's house, I found out she was using heroin, which is something that I never experimented with before in my life. I had already injected, so it was fair to say once I tried to keep her sober on my own devices and like I was God and trying to guide her back to being sober, I lost my job, and shortly after I started using heroin with her. Within that 2-year period of us being together, went through numerous jobs. I overdosed 5 times. The 5th time, I think I had 1 beat per minute for 5 minutes, and my mother was there, my daughter was there, and my wife was there. My mom was beating on my chest. I don't remember much. I just remember the paramedics' voices, and I remember it being dark, and something told me that God wasn't done. I know it was God. There's no other way to define how I made it through. Even the paramedics said I was lucky. My tipping point for me was after that overdose. I went back to the house and used the same heroin that killed me. I hit my knees in the shower after, and I told God that I was done. I asked him to take me and use me any way he can, because I can't do this anymore. I'd seen the destruction that I had caused trying to make things work on my own. I was affecting a family. I thought I was a father, but I wasn't a father. I wasn't even a son to my parents. So I made the decision in 2014 to pursue treatment again. I told my wife that I was going, and that I was going to get better, and that I would come back and we would try to make it work. And that was actually initially my plan, because I was really good in my addiction at somehow twisting my faith into thinking that God wanted me to do certain things. I'm really good at twisting my own head around. And it's 2 weeks into being sober in treatment, I realized that the best decision I could make for myself was to get out of that potent environment and to go through a divorce, which was something I never really thought of ever doing in my life. I thought that when you marry for good. But I saw that it takes 2 to make a relationship work, so I stepped away and I decided to get better. So all that being said, I had to make the decision for what was best for me. I knew God had a plan. I had to put him first, and then myself came next, and then after that, all the people I cared about, then I'd be able to take care of them as well.
Tyler Bowman can show us that through faith, through a strong foundation of spiritual relationship with God, you could find your recovery.
Recovery to me is my life. It's not only what I feel like God's brought me to service to do, it's to help others recover, but it's also a process for me, and it's been that finding that faith in Him and knowing that no matter what scary situation that I come in contact with in my life, that I have the strength to pull through because He gives me that strength. I'd say addiction's driven by fear of the unknown, fear of change, and I didn't have God in my life. I ran from Him for years. I knew who He was. I just didn't think I was good enough. I thought I was tainted. I thought I was a bad person. I thought that He wouldn't forgive me, and I thought that I couldn't live up to His expectations for my life. But now I see that I don't have to be perfect, that all I can do each day is help another individual that may be struggling, and that's where I'm at in my life, and that's what keeps me sober and on the right path, is knowing that as long as I don't pick up and as long as I keep taking life on life's terms and living it to the fullest and always giving all my grace, my gratitude to God, I'll stay sober. He keeps me full today. He fills that void that I used to feel with all these drugs and all the alcohol, and there's nothing that could ever be on the same level. I think it was my first year sober. I was working at GNC in Florida after I got out of treatment, and they gave a drug addict keys to a store with over $100,000 in merchandise, and a lady came in and she said, "God's good, isn't He?" And I said, all the time. But she looked at me and she said, "I can see you're still hurting." And at the time I was going through some stuff with my ex-wife and trying to decide if I should still be the one to save her, because she couldn't find faith and couldn't get it together. And she could just see into my heart and that I was troubled. And by the end of it, she was praying over me. And in my store with the camera on us, where my boss probably could have saw it if he knew that I was taking a break from work to do that, but she prayed over me and I lost it. I felt that tingle up the back of your neck, and I call them God bumps today. And I told her, I said, that feeling I just got, I want more of that, and I want it all the time. And that's exactly how I used to talk about drugs. But it was at that point that I really felt the connection with God, and I knew in my heart that as long as I do my part and I pursue Him, that He's going to uphold His end, even if He doesn't always give me an answer when I want it. Spirituality is the key, and God is the key. He's the only one that can bring us back from that place of hopelessness, and in doing so we find strength and we become planted in faith, and we become the men or the women that He's intended us to be.
So as we can see in Tennessee, and just like every other place around the country, we're dealing with an addiction problem, but Tyler shows us that he has a recovery journey that can motivate other people to find that same path. He's helping people find their way to recovery just like he did. I'm Michael DeLeon saying goodbye from Nashville. We'll see you on the next episode of On the Road to Recovery.